Hello, my beautiful friends. I am Laurel Bleadon-Maffei with Illuminating Souls, welcoming you to this episode of Sleepy Bedtime Blessings, a podcast designed to help you rest, relax, and fall asleep, all while deepening in your connection with your beautiful team of angels who love you so. And if we're meeting for the first time, I am an angelic practitioner, a spiritual teacher, and an encourager of souls. It's the best job ever. I'm so lucky that I get to do this work. And what that translates to is I facilitate one-on-one angel sessions. I also offer soul mentoring that provides for ongoing support as you move through a time of growth or transformation in your life. And I offer a variety of classes designed to inspire your spirit, and typically, I offer a new class every month or every 6 weeks. You know, from a marketing perspective, the business gurus would say to focus on having a signature offering so that I would be known for teaching one thing. But I love variety, and I love getting to be a student and the teacher. So I always have different classes showing up, so I invite you to come to my website, illuminatingsouls.com, and see what I have going on. Perhaps there will be a class that speaks to you. Typically, my classes are small in size, and they're taught over Zoom, so you have the opportunity to be in an intimate and sacred space and meet other light bearers, other beautiful souls. And you'll get to have a wonderful experience, and it would be my blessing to share a class with you. And while you're at my website, I invite you to sign up for my mailing list. I have a daily inspiration email blast that goes out every weekday, where I will send you an inspiring message. And again, my website is illuminatingsouls.com. So lots of ways we can connect. But for now, the angels and I are here to help you fall asleep. And also, I want to acknowledge those of you who listen during your waking hours on purpose. It's not that the podcast keeps you awake, but you listen while you're commuting or puttering around your house or going for your walk. You listen during your daytime hours, and it is a blessing to keep you company whatever time of day you choose to listen in. And just know that the angels and I are sending you so much love. So as I record this, it is another Sunday morning here, and it's quiet. I love the quiet of a Sunday morning. It's not just that it is quiet when it comes to noise. The energy is quiet. And so I have found over the years that I have become an early morning person. You know what is so funny about that is my father, Jack, was always a morning person. Once the sun set, he was ready to sleep. And we used to joke with him about it, that he was always sleeping when it came to the evening hours, but the thing was, he was up early in the morning. It wasn't unusual for my dad to be up at 4:30 or 5. And I used to laugh at him about that because I was someone who loved the evening. And I wouldn't go to sleep before 11 o'clock. And I didn't know how he could get up so early. Well, little did I know I just had to live long enough to inherit my father's inner clock. Because I'm the one now who cannot keep my eyes open once the sun goes down. And I'm typically in bed by 8 or 8:30, but I am awake by 4. And so I think my father must be smiling down at me now that I have inherited his sense of sleep time. And so whatever your sleep cycle is, whether you go to bed early like I do and you're up in the wee hours of the morning and you love the quiet of the early morning before the rest of the world awakens, or maybe you're a night owl and you love staying up late and you love sleeping into the morning. Or maybe you're a napper. You love a good cat nap or a nap in the middle of the day. Each of us has our own unique sleep cycle. And as we learn to attune to it and come into harmony with it, my hope for you is as you attune to your own unique sleep cycle, that you're able to accommodate it. I know that's not always the case if you work, for instance, traditional hours, or if life requires you to show up at certain hours. I know that that's a different situation. But whatever your sleep habit is, your sleep cycle, your sleep style, whether you sleep with lots of blankets or you kick off all the blankets and sheets, it is my great honor to keep you company as you prepare to drift off. And I share the quiet Sunday morning energy with you. Like even as I go quiet, I do not hear anything. There is no ambient noise out in my neighborhood. And it is so sweet. It's also a bit overcast and foggy, and that also dampens the noise. So I'm here in the blanket fort, sending you love. And as I get ready to call the angels in to join us, I will share what I am craving in this moment is an energy clearing and balancing. We did a wee bit of traveling over the past few days. I'll share with you a little bit more about that later in the episode. But I was out in the world, probably more in the world than I have been in several years. And it's an adjustment. It's different out there. So I would love to ask the angels to come in and bring us a lovely clearing of energy. So I invite you to cozy on up and snuggle on in. It's my mantra for the podcast. And get comfortable. And take some nice deep breaths in and out as we gently call ourselves forward into the heart of God. And beautiful angels on high, I can feel that you are already present here, but I also invite you to join us. And as we invite you forward, we open our hearts to receive the love you are bringing to us now. And angels, I ask that you bring forward gentle, clearing, healing light that serves our highest and best good. I ask that you clear away anything that does not belong to us. And I ask that you bring to us waves upon waves of love that will help us to replenish and refresh our energy fields. And dear ones, just take some nice deep breaths in and out, allowing your body to relax and receive. The angels are with you now. They are always with you, but in this moment, perhaps it is that you have more of an awareness of their presence. And you might imagine or feel their love with you now. For me, sometimes it feels like the air around me has shifted a bit in a really wonderful, lovely way. I sometimes get tingles, especially around my crown chakra. But mostly what I find really works for most people is to imagine that they are with you. You might wonder why I recommend that. Well, it's because where our imagination resides overlaps with our divine intuition. They're not one and the same, but they share real estate. Because often when people are trying being the operative term, to have a mystical experience, there's a lot of pressure and the intellect is coming in and can I trust what just happened? Or I'm not feeling anything, so they must not be here. But most of us have had positive experiences with imagination. I have always been a daydreamer all my life. My imagination has served me well. And so all I have to do is close my eyes and imagine that the angels are with me. And it starts shifting my awareness to welcome them in. So take a moment and see if this supports you as well. Just imagine your angels, the most loving presence in this universe, that they are shining love upon you now. They have known you since before you were born. They love you through time and space. Just like the sun shines upon you on a bright, sunny day, so do your angels shine love upon you always. And just imagine what it is to receive this profound compassion, understanding, acknowledgement, and celebration of all that you are. You are a miracle from on high. You are precious in this world. You are magical. You are creative. You are wondrous. And if you're thinking, yeah, no, she must be talking about someone else. No, I'm talking about you. Maybe you just don't remember this about you, but your angels remember. And I am here to help you remember too. So go ahead and take another nice deep breath in and allow your angels to shine their love upon you, helping you remember who you are as a divine being in human form. Coming into your wholeness, coming into your gifts and abilities, and allowing yourself to come present to the beauty in your soul. And just breathe. And also, if it is your intention to fall asleep, allow yourself to drift off to the sound and the rhythm of my voice. You've done enough for this day. And this is your time to rest. And I'll be with you for the next hour or so, sharing with you some rambles and stories and reflections, but nothing so important that you have to stay awake and aware. Just experience this as a loving, soothing, friendly voice, wandering through a story or a reflection while you drift off. And while you go to sleep, your angels will take good care of you. And I'm going to tell you a story. And tonight, I think we're going to do some wandering together. I had a different plan for this episode, but as I was getting ready to record, I decided I'm going to do a little bit of a mashup of a couple of different themes, because I'm in a wandering kind of mood, and I'll share with you what started the wandering for our two mashup themes for this episode. The first is, as I alluded to in the beginning, my husband and I just came back from a short trip, and it was my first time traveling since the pandemic, and I have a lot to say about that, but we'll get there. We'll get to that, and I'm going to make it sleepy and funny, and so we're going to get there. But as I was going to start recording that, my husband was in the living room watching one of his Sunday shows. And on Sundays, he watches Last Man Standing, which I had never watched that show before, but it's actually pretty funny. And there are so many wonderful things about my husband, but one that just always brings me joy is when I hear him laughing. He is someone who laughs out loud at the television, and he has the best laugh. And so I can be anywhere in the house, and when I hear him laughing at something he's watching, my heart is filled with so much joy. And so as I was getting ready to talk to you about my trip. And I paused there because I was going to use a Jewish word, a Yiddish word that you may or may not have heard of before. And the word is kvetch. If I had to spell it, it would be Kvetch, kvetch. And kvetching is a form of complaining, whereas complaining might seem really dark and negative. Kvetching is, you ask somebody how you are, and they're like, it could be better. It could be worse. That's kvetching. So I was going to kvetch to you a little bit about my trip, which I probably still will do. But then I heard my husband laughing at his television show, and it brought me so much joy. I thought, well, I don't want to kvetch to you for the next 40 minutes. And I thought, well, what could be born of listening to my husband's laughter and sharing with you about his Sunday ritual of watching his favorite shows. And I love to make space for him to watch the shows that he loves because he works really, really hard during the week. During the week, I get to be with you and the angels, and I get to do all of my favorite things, and he works a traditional job that he likes. It's not that it's a bad job. He likes his job, but it's a different muscle, right? He has to be at work. And so on the weekends, I like to try to nurture him in the simplest of ways, right? So if there's a TV show he likes to watch, I make sure we have time for that. And he's writing some science-based papers for work. I'm not going to go into all of that, but anyways, he works and watches TV, so the TV is on sort of in the background as a distraction while he's doing this other work. So he multitasks. So as I was getting ready to record this episode, I heard him laughing. And I went in and watched part of the episode with him and laughed with him. And I love that there are things in the world that make us laugh. So here's the mashup. I thought I would share with you some of my favorite television shows. And interestingly enough, as I started writing down my list, and just so you know, so you get the full effect, I wrote it on the back of an envelope. So you know this is an official list because it's written on a scrap of paper. When I got to the last show that was on my list, which I will get to, there was a lovely segue to share with you about my trip. And so we're going to do both. I'm going to weave this together for you. So here we go. As you know, if you are someone who listens, you know I love television. Now I know there are those of you out there who might be among those who don't enjoy television. And I honor your path. And I will say, it is not mine. I was raised on TV, and I love television. When they release survey information and they say how many hours a day or a week people watch television, I always think, yeah, that makes sense. I don't watch as much as I used to. I watch probably less television than I ever have in my life, but I still love it. And I thought I would share with you some of my favorite series. Now, this is not in any specific order. This is not a top 10 list. So if I don't mention your favorite show or clearly an awesome show that we've all watched and loved, this is not meant to be comprehensive. It's just, listen, it's a sleep podcast. My hope is you're drifting off, so I'm just going to ramble through some of my favorite television shows and share with you what I love about them, and maybe you love them too. Or maybe you've never watched them and now you can, and you're going to have a great experience. So the first show I want to share with you is one that I love so much. And it is The West Wing. If you've never seen The West Wing, I am so excited that you get to watch it for the first time because it is an extraordinary television show. The first few seasons were written almost exclusively by Aaron Sorkin. He created the show. And it is a show about the West Wing, which is where the president is in the United States and all of his staff. And it's an amazing ensemble cast, well written, brilliant. Martin Sheen plays the president, and everyone who's in the show is phenomenal. And okay, hold on. Okay, and I just have to say that remember how I was talking about how I loved quiet Sundays? Well, you know who else loves the mornings? My neighbor's chickens, who may be laying eggs right now because they just started clucking. So if you happen to hear a chicken in the background, just know that I can't help it and I'm still going to record. So sending love to my neighbor's chickens. Okay, so West Wing, brilliant show. It ran for 7 seasons. I love everything about it. It used to be it used to be on broadcast television. And then it was on Netflix for many years. And now, at least in the US, it's on HBO Max. And every year or 2 years, my husband and I watch it from beginning to end. We usually start somewhere in the winter, and we watch every episode. There's also a wonderful podcast called West Wing Weekly, which is one of the podcasts that had me first start listening to podcasts. And it's with Joshua Malina, who played Will Bailey in the series, and his friend Rishikesh Hirway. I can't say his name. Hold on. I'm going to try and say it better. Rishikesh Hirway. My apologies, sir. Who did this podcast, and they would watch every episode and give commentary on it. And they would have behind the scenes information about the episodes. They'd had different actors and writers and producers on. So it made me love the show even more. So I would say one of my absolute favorite shows is The West Wing. And if you've never watched it, it is brilliant television. It's one of those shows I can watch over and over and over again. Another show that I have that relationship with, and my husband does too, that it's one of our favorite shows, is called The Midwife, which is a BBC production that here in the US airs on PBS and can be seen on Netflix. And what a gorgeous show that is. It's hard to believe that the episodes are only an hour because there is so much happening in an hour. The depth of character, the character development, the storylines, the scenery, everything about it is a feast for the senses, and the stories are so heartfelt. So they just finished their 11th season. Again, every few years we watch it from beginning to end all over again because it is such a rich show. And my love for Call the Midwife introduced me to the show Miranda because the comedian and actress Miranda Hart plays Chummy on Call the Midwife. And so at some point, when I shared about my love for Call the Midwife on social media, a friend said, "Have you watched Miranda? It's hysterical." And I hadn't. At the time, Miranda was on Hulu in the US. I think it's now on Amazon Prime. Again, US. I don't know where they are showing it in other countries. And I will say it is one of the funniest series I have ever seen. It's hysterical. And Wes and I have watched it again, beginning to end, 3 or 4 times. And there are still some episodes where I laugh so hard I have to pause because I can't breathe. And I have to catch my breath because I am laughing so hard. It is a wonderful show, and if you have not seen it, give yourself the treat and find it somewhere. It starts off a little slow, like the first episode I wasn't sold because it's a different kind of humor and you have to get to know the characters. But by the 3rd or 4th episode, I was a fan. And there are still a few episodes that just always have me rolling on the floor. So if you are looking for something that will make you laugh, if you have the same kind of sense of humor that I do, I guess that would be a big assumption, find Miranda. It is awesome. Another one of my favorite shows, actually, a few of my favorite shows on here are not available anymore on streaming services, much to my chagrin. I'm so surprised they are not available, but the one I'm going to share with you now, my understanding is it has to do with music clearances because, well, first let me tell you what the show is. And if you're in my age group, you likely will remember it too. Northern Exposure. How many of you remember Northern Exposure? From the first episode, I was hooked. Though the premise of Northern Exposure, for those of you who have never heard of it, is that I can't remember his last name now. It's been a long time because I haven't seen it, but his first name is Joel. Joel becomes a doctor. He is a high-strung Jewish New Yorker who has his medical school paid for by this small town in Alaska, Sicily. And so he actually has to move to Sicily, Alaska, and be their town doctor to pay back for the school loans. It's definitely a fish out of water story, and every character is fantastic, and the writing is brilliant. And this came on the scene in the 90s, I think. And so I had a VCR by then. DVRs, I don't think existed yet, but I had a VCR. And so, and also a VCR for West Wing. And I would record my shows. And just so you know, if any of the younger people in your life want to mock you for not knowing how to use your smartphone or you can't figure out how to use an app, put them in front of an old VCR and ask them to program it so that it records a show on Thursdays at 8 o'clock, and then see who's laughing. Because you needed an engineering degree to know how to program a VCR, and I was great at it because I loved television and I was going to learn how to record my shows. And again, because it's a VCR, you had all of these different tapes, right? And you would put your labels on them. I did anyways. And I would handwrite what episodes were on them. And I had my collection of my Northern Exposure tapes. And I loved Northern Exposure. And I had a huge crush on the character of Chris in the Morning. He was the DJ at the local station who waxed philosophical about Buddhism and all kinds of social commentary. And he was played by John Corbett, who I love. And I just had to look it up. The show ran from 1990 to 1995, which was definitely VCR era. So I had a bunch of Northern Exposures on VHS tapes that I would get to go back and watch. And my understanding is it's not available on streaming services because they had trouble clearing the music. It would be expensive to either clear the music or re-edit the episodes. And another one of my favorite shows that falls into that category is 30-something, which was also a phenomenal show. I used to watch that with friends. Not the show Friends, we'll get to that in a second, but I used to have friends come over and we would have a watching party for 30-something because we loved it so much. And I think when it came out, I was still in my 20s, so the characters in 30-something felt older than me. I thought, oh, this is what I have to look forward to. I don't know how I would feel about it now, because of course I have not seen it since the 90s. But I wonder what it would be like to go back and watch the show now. But I loved 30-something, which isn't available. In terms of Friends, of course, I don't know why I say it that way. You might not like it, but I loved Friends from the word go. I watched it from the very first episode and have rewatched it many times. It's one of those shows that whenever I flip channels and it's on, I'll watch the episode, even if I've seen it 15 times before. That's a part of my own life journey. You know how different television shows remind you of a time of life. Friends is that for me. And I remember when Friends came out, I was actually living in Tarrytown, New York that year, and I was missing my friends. So I think it had a rather poignant place in my heart because it was a time of my life when I was missing having my own social circle. And so I would watch Friends and be reminded of the kind of life I had in LA. Not that any of us had apartments that were that fabulous, or none of us were perhaps that goofy, but it definitely reminded me of my friends that I had left back in LA. I will also say one of the series that aired or premiered the same year as Friends, I believe. I think it was the same year because I was living in New York. Was Chicago Hope, which is a medical drama. Now, I love medical dramas. All of them. ER, St. Elsewhere, who remembers St. Elsewhere? Medical Center, if we're going way back. So I love a good medical drama, usually because there's a big cast of characters and they work together. I don't know what it is. There's enough drama in it for me to be interesting. And Chicago Hope had the bad luck of premiering opposite of ER. So here you had two medical dramas set in Chicago airing opposite of each other. Now, ER was a fantastic show. And it had George Clooney, but George Clooney was not, huge George Clooney yet. He was one of the actors on the show, but quickly became very popular. But I loved Chicago Hope. And, oh, by the way, I had a VCR, so I could watch one and record the other, which, as someone who grew up without VCRs being invented, I need you to know that I appreciated the flexibility that gave me. And they weren't like the DVRs today where you can record 4 shows or 6 shows at once. You could only record 1 show unless you had 2 VCRs. So part of the strategy would be, which show do I watch live and which one do I record? And part of that was, which show do I want to be able to watch again? So I loved Chicago Hope from the word go. And Chicago Hope had Mandy Patinkin, who is one of these actors that I love no matter what he's doing. I'll watch him do anything. And I love the TikToks and Instagrams that he makes with his son and his wife. I loved him from Princess Bride. And Chicago Hope also had Adam Arkin, Hector Elizondo, Christine Lahti. Later in the show, Mark Harmon was in it. It was a brilliant show, and I loved it. Oh, Peter Berg was in it. He played Billy something. It was a great character. And Mandy Patinkin's character was a very high-strung, manic, creative heart surgeon. And I absolutely loved that show. I loved it more than ER. I thought ER was good, but I didn't feel like it was brilliant. But again, Chicago Hope is not available streaming anywhere. Otherwise, I would absolutely rewatch it again. And I did share this story before in the episode where I talk about the early days of the internet. But I do have a funny Chicago Hope story for you that I'll share with you again. So when I first got my first laptop, it was probably 1995. And there weren't a lot of people online at that time. And one of the things I would do is I would join a Chicago Hope chat room. And this was back in the day when you had to use a dial-up modem, no such thing as Wi-Fi. And so I would unplug my phone from the phone and plug it into my modem and dial in. And then I would be chatting, and it's a text chat, just so we're clear. It was a text chat room, and we would all talk about Chicago Hope. And usually the producers or writers from Chicago Hope would join us. This was not something their publicity machine had set up because the studios weren't doing this at that point. It's just what they wanted to do. And so one night we're in the chat and one of the producers or someone in the writer's room says, "Oh, Mandy's here," meaning Mandy Patinkin. And we all go crazy. We're so excited. And Mandy starts typing and he says, "I'll tell you what, send me a couple of your phone numbers and I'll call you to prove that it's me." And so all of a sudden you see these phone numbers flying across the screen because, again, it was a different time and we didn't think that that would be a bad thing to do. But I couldn't type in my phone number because I only had one phone line and I had to stay connected to the chat using my phone. But within a few minutes, someone comes on the chat and types in, "Oh my God, it's him. He said, 'My name is Inigo Montoya. You killed my father. Prepare to die.'" It was an awesome moment. And it was one of those pure joy moments that really could have only happened in the early days of the internet, right? It hadn't become taken for granted that those things would happen. It was this really wonderful experience. So that is my soliloquy to Chicago Hope and Mandy Patinkin in the early days of the internet. So now I want to shift to another kind of favorite TV show that I watch, which is reality television. So as I've shared with you before, I grew up watching soap operas. Well, not grew up. I started watching soaps in my late teens, but I watched them for decades. And reality television is akin to soaps, but with real people. And one of the first reality television programs in my era was Real World from MTV. And I loved it. It was fascinating, especially the early seasons, Real World New York, which was the first one, Real World Los Angeles, San Francisco, all those early seasons I used to watch. And then they had another program called Road Rules that I watched. And I mention both of those because they brought those casts together to create the challenge. And I have come to love the challenge. They still produce the challenge. It's actually become more popular than ever. It's part athletic, it's part social. And over the years, those of us who've watched these MTV shows for a long time, we get to know the cast and we get to see how they grow and change. And I happen to love the challenge, which I'm going to weave in together in just a minute. So I will also say I love Survivor, watched it since the first season ever. There's going to be a theme here, so bear with me. And I also love The Amazing Race. So how do these all weave together? So do you have an alter ego? Meaning, do you have an imaginary self who is way cooler than you are in reality? Because I do. So my alter ego, my imaginary self, she is athletic. She does yoga on the beach at sunset. She has acai bowls for breakfast, and the fruit is sliced up perfectly that she can't help but take a picture of it. She travels all over the world and is not the least bit intimidated by new experiences. And then there is my reality, which I am none of those things. So here's where I'm going to blend this together. So I was thinking about Survivor and The Amazing Race. And it's so funny because every time my husband sits down to watch an episode of The Amazing Race with me, he laughs. He goes, "We should go on it." And I look at him and I say, "Have you met me? Have you met me?" No. I would be terrible on it. Or if you've ever watched an episode of Naked and Afraid, he laughs. He goes, "Yeah, I could see you on that." And I said, "Yeah, I would last 5 seconds and I would make the camera person give me their granola bar and their jacket. I am someone who loves comfort and reliability." So here's where I blend this together, because I shared with you about my trip and how I was going to try to avoid fetching or complaining to you about it. So here I am, someone who loves watching people go on adventures and do crazy things. The Challenge, Survivor, The Amazing Race. And my husband had to travel to Park City, Utah for a business meeting. It was mandatory. We had to go, and I was going to go with him. And so we went last week. It was my first time taking a plane in almost 3 years. And I have finally labeled it as I have a little bit of travel anxiety. I haven't always had it. I was someone who loved to travel, and I love to go on adventures, and, just give me 5 minutes, I'll pack a suitcase and let's go. But over the past 10 years or so, it has become so much harder for me to travel. I suspect it's because of the work that I do and how insulated I am. I work from home, and so the energy field that I'm in all day, every day is lovely and what I want it to be. And I'm only really out in the world to go grocery shopping. I see a friend every now and then, but I'm not out in the world all the time. It's easy enough. I love grocery shopping, first off, so it's nothing for me to put on my mask and go into the store and get my groceries and come home. But this idea of packing a bag and leaving my home, I'm having almost like a sensory processing issue with it. And then to get back out into the world among crowds was really challenging for me, I will say. And I don't know how many of you have been to the Salt Lake City airport in the past 2 years, but apparently, and I say this because it was my first time being there, but apparently they did this big construction project with it, and the Southwest Gate is at the other side of the universe. And so they have signs saying it's about a 15-minute walk to get to the gate B, or not gate B, what would be Terminal B, to get to Terminal B where Southwest is. And we weren't prepared for this. And my husband and I are among those people who are still masking. I know it's not a popular thing these days, as I have discovered surprisingly during my trip. Most people do not wear masks any longer. I found that to be surprising because we still mask. And so hiking from one terminal to the other while masked was not fun. And Park City was beautiful. Like I feel blessed I had the opportunity to go, but I thought it was so funny as I watched these shows like Amazing Race. And I can't even go to Park City for 2 days without feeling absolutely exhausted and like I'm going to need a few days to recover. We stayed at a really beautiful hotel that was part of the business trip that he was on. It was a group that he had to participate in. And so they had made all the arrangements. And as we were in the hotel bed, I kept saying to my husband, I can't wait to get home to our bed. Because as you know, I love my bed at home. So last night when I got to crawl into my bed, our bed, I don't want to say mine, like it's not my husband's too, but our bed at home, with all of my blankets and pillows that I love, I was such a happy girl. So that's my mashup. I was going to fetch to you about my trip, but then I wanted to tell you about my favorite TV shows, and I found a way to blend the two. So my alter ego would absolutely go on the challenge. I wouldn't do Survivor because I'm not about discomfort, but my alter ego would love to do Amazing Race. But in reality, I would last maybe 4 hours. And then I would say, yeah, no, okay, I could go home now. Isn't that funny? Like, in my imagination, I am someone who would love to travel. I used to love to travel. In my mind, in my imagination, I want to go traveling. Right? Like I want to go back to Hawaii and I want to go spend time with friends in Los Angeles. I want to go to London and Glastonbury, Tuscany. I want to go and see the world. And then I wonder if who I am truly in this moment, if that's at all a good idea. I think it's one of the reasons that maybe going on a cruise appeals to me, because I really only have to go to one place. I just have to get myself on the ship, and then I don't have to think about it again until I go home. But I don't know that I would do a cruise either, so listen, if you are my friend and you don't live near here, I love the idea of coming to visit you. But I think I might have some clearing to do around this whole idea of traveling. I think perhaps I have grown deep, deep roots in my comfort zone here in my home in Vallejo. And I'm going to have to perhaps do some renegotiation with how I am holding for this in consciousness so that I can expand my world a little bit. Because I do love the idea of going on adventures. But for now, it is a Sunday morning here as I record it. And I have nowhere I need to go. And so I am going to cozy up in my home and perhaps watch some TV that makes us laugh so I can hear my husband laugh, which is one of my happy sounds. And I get to spend this time with you in the blanket fort. If that isn't a metaphor for how I feel about life at the moment, the blanket fort. Oh, I'm literally going to pull a blanket over my head and pretend the rest of the world does not exist and come into my happy zone. I love my life. It's an awesome life. And how awesome is it that I have found a way to make a blanket fort part of my life in a healthy, productive, creative way. Oh, I feel like I just want to high five my angels. Life is good. And I am grateful. So, my friends, I don't quite know where we traveled here in this episode, but hopefully it was boring enough that you could fall asleep, or perhaps just entertaining enough that you could laugh with me and maybe think about some of your favorite shows and how you feel about traveling. We are all works in progress, right? We are forever growing and evolving and shifting and adapting. And I think sometimes it is interesting to reflect on where we are right now versus how we've been in the past. So I love you very much. And I wish you the sweetest of dreams. You are a blessing in this world, and I am deeply, deeply grateful for you. So thank you for listening, and I'll be back soon with another episode. I love you. Thank you.